Hello, everybody. Welcome to Drat and Drake Veterinary Podcast. I'm going to jump into this today and introduce Patti Eddington. She is an author. Well, I'll start from the beginning. She graduated from Michigan State in journalism, actually. A very unique guest, typically not your typical veterinarian, but there is a relationship I'll kind of get into. You were a journalist for many years, on and off. You are married to a veterinarian, Dr. Jim Moore, over in Michigan as well. Since then, you've been teaching dance. You are now very involved in social media, especially for Dr. Moore's hospital. And in the last few years, you've published a couple of books. One of the more recent ones, prior to the one we'll be talking about today, is The Girl with Three Birthdays, which it seems like a beautiful memoir about yourself, which I'd love for you to share a little bit more about that. But the main reason of why we're meeting today is the recent release of your book. I think you released it back in April of this year. Don't Look in the Freezer: The Very Strange Life of a Veterinarian's Wife. So without further ado, I want to introduce Patti Eddington.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted.
Thanks for being here. Again, we've already spoken for a little bit before I hit the record button. You've got such an incredible aura, just a wonderful way of speaking. I'm going to jump into just the review because I've read the book. I was on a plane during travel, and obviously, as a veterinarian, I've never felt so seen from someone who's not a veterinarian. I highly recommend, actually I have the book here right in front of me, I highly recommend anyone in the veterinary field or anyone who loves animals to pick this book up and give it a read. It really shows. So I've been in the veterinary field since I was a college student, and I've been in the hospital. I've worked with vets who are around the same age as Dr. Moore, and also the same kind of personality, right? Where I've never met him, but it seems like he will literally do anything for anyone and any animal. He may be kind of cursing under his mouth a little bit and kind of mumbling curse words, but he truly, it seems like he's there to really service the community and be there for everyone that he possibly can. And I've worked with people like that, and seeing the community trust and rely so heavily, and seeing a veterinarian shoulder that level of responsibility was something that I've always been inspired for when working as a technician, and something that I continue to strive for. So seeing the words you've written about Jim, about the animals. There's going to be particular questions, but again, truly such a wonderful book. You are such an incredible writer. I felt like I've been able to be friends with you by reading this book and be able to know just you, the whole hospital, and everyone in your life. So again, thank you so much for writing this book for us.
Wow, you make my day. And I'm interested to hear why you feel seen. I want to hear about that. But I will tell you, I think when Jim watches that, he will never have felt so seen. That you described him perfectly. The only thing that's a tiny bit wrong is he doesn't always curse under his breath. But really, that is Jim. He would do anything for you. He doesn't really come across as a curmudgeon, but he can be a tiny bit.
My daughter has started reading that book recently, so yeah. So obviously your classic question that I think people would like to know: what was the inspiration for this? I know you started writing this for I think almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
What sparked this?
Well, what sparked it was that I was in a time in my career, and it was during 2010, 11, 12, right in there. The economy had been kind of bad. I was working for newspapers. My parents had been ill and passed away. And I was kind of at a loss, and I'm like, what should I do now? And blogs were such a big thing then. And I thought, well, I was working for magazines, but that was freelance work, and it didn't pay very well. And our daughter went away to college in 2012, and I thought, I have all this time. I didn't really have a lot of time. I've always been busy, but I thought, what am I going to do now? And Jim and I were sitting around one day, and I said, do you think some of these stories that we talk about, the funny stories that just keep coming up and up, would be good for a blog or a book? Do you think people would read them? And he's like, I don't know, maybe. And so I went to a writing workshop at Interlochen Arts Academy, which is a beautiful school of the arts in upper northern Michigan. And they gave us an assignment, and I don't remember what the assignment was actually, but I wrote a short essay that it had to be a few minutes long. And I wrote it, and it was called, Of Course These Things Can Always Turn Around. And it's a story that made it into the book about an emergency call at the clinic that we thought was going really bad, and then went really well. And then just as the owners were on the phone with Jim and he's telling it's going really well, it went really bad.
Yes.
And people laughed. When I read the story, they're like, oh, I can't believe that happened. And I'm like, so maybe there is something. So I played around with the blog, and finally put together a manuscript, and I had no reason or right to do it. I didn't know anything about writing a book, but I had taken a couple more writing workshops, and a good friend of mine, his name is Wade Rouse, and he also writes under the name Viola Shipman. He's a USA Today bestselling author, introduced me to his agent when I had the first draft of Freezer done. And I'm trying to think exactly when it was, 13, 14, somewhere in there. And she read it and she said, almost. She said, almost. She said, one thing is I don't really identify with the characters that much. We're the characters.
So
Like, oh.
interesting. Okay.
Oh, and so I took that piece of information. And then she said, and my other thing is never change the title. She said, never change the title. And I don't know if your viewers will know, most books are never published with the title that the author, it's called a working title, and they hardly ever make it onto the book. They're very rare. So I didn't even have to fight for this one, so that it was the right title for it. But I took it to heart, and I didn't realize, I showed it to exactly her and one other agent who said, I have to be a little careful because he was an agent for a very famous book about an animal. And I said, he'll like it. And so I sent my thing to him, my query letter, and he said, I like your writing style, but I'm married to a veterinarian myself and I'll never sell this book. So I'm like, okay. I think all these years later, what it was just, like I said, I didn't have the knowledge of how to put a manuscript together, really, dialogue and everything that you have to have when to make a story flow. And so I put it aside and went on to become a dance fitness instructor because that was logical. And then
So not to cut you off, so it
good.
wasn't so much, it was the writing style. So when you say that they couldn't relate to the characters, it's not like you really had to change the nature of the characters because it was you guys. It was just adjusting how you wrote it to make it reflect a more relatable characters.
I think, yes, exactly. No, memoir is difficult because you try very hard to reconstruct things from 20 years ago. Dialogue is difficult because was I there? Did I have a tape recorder on all the time? No. So you go to the intent. There are some conversations I remember verbatim, and I keep it short. This is what we were talking about. This is how it was said. But yes, no, I think I just didn't have a good handle on construction. And I think what she was making, the point she was making was, I think probably what I did was try to make us too good. I think I probably made us too goody two shoes. And we're just not. And I think that this manuscript, when I reworked it, I thought, well, I'm older now. I understand honesty. It wasn't that I was trying to be dishonest, but I was probably glossing over in the intro to the book, it's called We Are Not the Harriets. I say when you tell people you're writing a book about a veterinarian family, they say, oh, like those James Harriet books. I'm like, well, no, because we're nothing like them. I say in the book, our second language here in the house is profanity, and we're good people, but we're not perfect people. And I hope that's what comes across in this iteration of it. And that's probably why it was accepted.
And yes, I would say very much so. Whenever I tell someone a veterinarian, they suddenly their eyebrows light up, right? Their eyes light up and they think an expectation of me. It's like, well, I appreciate that, but now it almost doesn't make me feel comfortable because it's not the perfect job and it requires a particular personality, especially an emergency. And that's where, when you mentioned that specific story with that emergency patient, it resonated so well with me because that's happened to me before, right?
That was a bad story. I just can't even believe still that happened or why it happened. But it's funny now, but it sure wasn't funny at the time.
No.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
For viewers, Jim was on the phone telling the dog had looked great. Just 2 minutes before we went home, got another call. This is in time of no answering machines. It was just answering machine. I mean, no, we didn't even have a service then and had to go back to the clinic. And he just tried the owner. No cell phones or anything, and the owner wasn't there. The dog was doing great, and
then it wasn't.
And so it wasn't. He's on the phone saying, Phoebe's looking wonderful. Wow, her respiration is great. And, meanwhile, I'm back there going, Phoebe's not looking great anymore. And so he just kind of was like, and I'm like, I think so. And he just, like, his shoulders slumped and his chin slumped, and he said, of course these things can always
And it's happened to us.
I mean, it wouldn't have been fair to the client either to say, oh, guess what, Dad? So
Yeah. And that's something where, as I've come to, obviously I'm younger and a newer generation of veterinarian, but communication truly is the most important aspect. A lot of people want to be vets and they don't realize that 99% of our job is talking to people, right? And
exactly.
the big part
You need
of
to be
why I
a little
think
bit of
this,
a psychiatrist, yeah, yourself.
yes,
You have to, because Jim always said it's not the pets, it's the people, it's the owners that are the difficult thing. And we don't know what's going on in their lives, why they're resistant to this treatment, or if it's money, or if it's a religious belief, or if you don't
yes,
really know. So you kind of have to read. And I think some people are better at that than others,
yeah,
reading what might really be going on here.
yeah. I've learned to just ask, just say, you
What's
look
going on?
uncomfortable. Tell me what's going on.
That's
And
it. Yeah.
it's,
What a good way to
you know,
address it. Yeah. I sense that you're uncomfortable. What am I not getting through to you? What can I do differently or whatever? But
yeah.
yeah, that's a very good way to do it.
Well, thanks. So the reason why this podcast exists is actually probably very similar to kind of what you mentioned about writing your book. This is a social podcast. It's about how real we are as people, right? Some of most of my episodes don't even talk about medicine or how you treat things. It's a lot of it's just what I like, what my guests like, and why we exist in this world. And it's really trying to kind of draw a bridge between veterinarians and society. So.
Right. Yeah, that's admirable. I like it.
Oh, thank you. So, going into the relations with people, again, many people at my age, we are now married or becoming married and have kids. Tell me about your marriage revolving veterinary medicine, raising a child, raising a business, and all those things.
Yeah, well, it was Jim. He's getting, as I write in the book, getting close to retirement age. And people ask him if he has anything he would like to do, if he had any wishes or dreams or whatever. And he said, I just like to go do it all over again. And I smile and I'm like,
What a sweetheart.
no, you wouldn't.
I
No, and
mean,
I wouldn't.
he
It's a
just knew what to
wonderful,
say.
it's a wonder. I think he really means it. I think
Yeah.
he's got a lot better ability to forget maybe some of the things.
Yeah.
People who haven't read the book, someone came to our house with a gun. That wasn't a good Saturday.
No.
And what I never knew when the door rang what it was going to be. And I also knew that I signed on for that. I met Jim when I was 16 and went through vet school with him. I was in journalism school and we went through it all together. We were extremely not rich. And so I knew exactly what I was getting into. And what really helps here, I knew one veterinarian one time whose spouse didn't like animals, and I don't even know how that's possible. But I love animals. And I just would never have made a good veterinarian in any way, shape, or form. So I got to live it vicariously. But it does, and hopefully you folks are finding it different. But as we came up we got married in 1981 when I was 21. And so we were young and didn't mind so much being poor, but it every aspect of our life in those early years was veterinary medicine. I was doing my job as a newspaper reporter or then later as a hospital public relations person, but it was still controlled by veterinary medicine because Jim was on call always. We started the clinic in 1988 and there was just never a time we weren't on call. And when he's on call, that means I was on call and I would go in with him because he needed someone
Wow.
to sop up the blood and urine in my cocktail dress when we were supposed to go out for our anniversary. And so everything was shaped then. It was, gosh, I don't even know how many years in. And I put my foot down and I said, we can start a rotation of area veterinarians. And we started there. And now we have emergency clinics and so forth. So
Mhm.
I hope it's easier on younger vets because we made it. But there were some big fights through the years. I don't think I ever criticized Jim for working because for emergency calls. But what it might have come out as is, so you've been gone all day. We have an infant. I'm not back to work yet. And now you're going to a Rotary meeting. That might
It,
have been extra stuff, the extra, it's
no,
like,
it resonates well, obviously, just because of my new job position in the last couple of years and being on call for my clients and having a newborn. And so the dynamic between it's what it sounds like you and Dr. Moore is very similar to myself and my wife and our relationship, that dynamic. And
and
so
she's a veterinarian as well, is that?
she's a veterinarian as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's going to be interesting for your kids. They're going to have such an interesting life. Molly We changed her diaper on the tables at the clinic. And
Wow.
yeah, I mean, she was there all the time. And when she was 3, we had a little stray kitten someone left outside. We brought it in and so forth. And I've got a picture of her like holding the cat. And she wanted it so badly. And I'm like, no, we've got cats. And she's like, oh, please, mommy. And I'm like, she can come home on a trial basis. And
Yeah.
so we had Tilly for 21 years on a trial basis. And so every frog and every hairless mole and came into the house and was in a box and
Even a tick.
even a tick. That was a fake tick. But
Well.
do you know that she tried to find me for the book launch? She tried to find a blow up tick for me because Jim went to one of your seminars or whatever, and they have the trade shows, and he came home and he gives her candy and t-shirts and stuff. And I came into the living room and she's blowing up. I says, that a beach ball? It had like simulated hair. And I'm like, it's a tick. And it's meant for an exam room or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, somehow the tick got accidentally stabbed with a salad fork at one point, but I don't know. The tick went everywhere until that point. It was time for the tick to go.
Now, I want to go back into your relationship with Dr. Moore. In one of your final chapters, you did mention that I think that was really the only time that you felt a significant level of frustration with him. I think this is during the post-operative aspect of your foot. So how are you? So I guess there's two questions that I have. Obviously, you set the expectation very early on about how this relationship was going to be. What were some of the things that you did to kind of help ground you during a lot of these difficult times when you feel like you didn't have your husband there or you didn't feel supported, right? And the second question is for, again, many of our listeners are veterinarians. With partners who aren't veterinarians, what advice would you give them to make sure that their partner can feel seen or put effort into making sure that they make sure their partner is happy, especially given how busy they are?
Sure. I think I have a belief system that is, we're born a certain way. And the way I usually think it manifests itself in me is I'm really positive. Something bad can happen and I will suffer over it for whatever. But then I try, well, it's annoying probably to other people. It's like, well, but on the other hand, maybe if that hadn't happened, this wouldn't happen, or I'm optimistic.
Yeah.
I think by the same token, I'm really good at being alone. I was an only child. I was raised by my parents who adopted me were in their 40s when they adopted me at 20 months old. So I was around older people a lot. So I really had to make my own fun a lot. I grew up in a neighborhood with lots of kids and we played baseball and all kinds of fun summer stuff. But in the wintertime, I was alone. We didn't do quite as much then. And then until we got older, we all got snowmobiles. But I learned that I loved to read. And I read a lot. And that solitary, I don't mind being alone. So I think that really helped. Jim and I are completely different personalities as well. So I'm sure he feels the same way about me. It's okay to have a couple days a week together, and we're always busy and that kind of thing. We appreciate it more. I never felt that. I usually didn't feel that I was being ignored because there was always a phone call saying, I love you, I'm so sorry, and I have this going on. And if I could help, I would. The best thing I guess we did is to really, truly love each other. We did from the time we were young. And are we perfect? No. Have we had fights? Yes. But always trying to come back to well, I'm better with you than I am without you. And this is what, in my early years, I worked a lot of nights and covered a lot of meetings and drove a long way to work and all of that kind of thing. So I think that our life didn't bother me as much as I think probably some people reading the book might think it would bother them. And I think that's just my nature. And I would say to the second, do what Jim did and always, I think if you feel seen, and Oprah Winfrey one time, I always remember, also with him not being there, I could watch Oprah Winfrey in the afternoon and no one would judge me. I was supposed to be working. But I always remember, she said, all arguments and fights start because one person is being felt that they're not being listened to or respected.
Yeah.
And so I think if that's the basis of it, every family is going to be different. Jim bought me magnificent gifts when he was able to. And that's not what was important, but I knew that they were always nice gifts, things that I would appreciate and he knew I would like or whatever. So I would just handmade book of paper and a little glass perfume bottle with a stopper, and it was antique or whatever. And so I think it worked for us because we did respect each other. And you're referring to, I had foot surgery, and I did put it in the book because it was a really dark part of our marriage. And everything in the book is, of course, approved by Jim and Molly. And everyone that is mentioned in the book by their real name approved it too before
Yes.
it went to press. But there's a couple of stories that I made up names for. But early in our marriage, when Jim was looking for a job, and he was in upstate New York, and a veterinarian's wife took me aside. He was interviewing, and she took me
Yes.
aside and said, well, it's all fun and games now, basically, but there's going to be a day, because Jim thought he was going to do large animal.
Hmm.
There's going to be a day that comes, and it's figurative, of course, but when there's a sick cow on one side of the fence and you're on the other side of the fence and you're not feeling well either, and he will choose the cow. And I'm like, no. And then all these years later, I had to go to a doctor's appointment. I'd been terribly sick I had to have surgery with a foot and a calf, and it was painful and misery for months. And I was finally maybe going to get out of the walking boot.
Mm.
And I could drive myself, but it was icy. And I wanted him to be there for that. And I said, he knew way ahead of time what it was going to be, but it doesn't matter what your plan is, right? Tell the dog. And I wandered around all day. He said he'd be here. He said he'd be here. And I got to leave. And I called the clinic, and his office manager, Shelley, said, he's on his way, or he will be real soon. And I burst into tears. I said, just tell him, never mind. I'll do it myself. And as I was limping out to the car with my knee walker and stuff, his car came in the driveway with Shelley driving.
Yeah.
So that was a low part. That was a low point. But
So real, though. I mean,
yeah,
it's a real story.
And it's many years ago now. Molly was still in 8th grade, I think, and Molly is 33. So that was a lot of years ago, but it stuck with. And it was a turning point too, I think, for him, because he was terribly sorry and terribly disappointed, and there just was nothing he could do. And I was probably acting selfish, but as I say in the book, it was just this one time. I didn't want him to choose the cow. I wanted him to choose me.
I don't think it's selfish at all, and I guess maybe I'm defending my wife too, right? Because she'll feel this way. I think it's so human, and as someone from Jim's side, when I was reading that chapter, I feel like I felt how he felt, because like it's not like I don't want to be there, but I'm torn between two different things. And again, obviously the right choice that I feel would be to choose my wife. However, you just get stuck.
I don't remember now what was wrong with the animal too. I mean, I guess it would be that would be something that would be important to know, certainly if it was life or death. And I was capable of driving. I got really good biceps from hauling myself across the car, putting my knee walker on the other side, but it was icy and I was a little concerned. Their parking lot was really icy, I remember, at the clinic where I was going to, but we got through it. That chapter is called In the Event of a Zombie Apocalypse, and about different things that you imagine could go wrong. And then when something really goes wrong, it's usually something pretty minor.
Yeah. And so I kind of going into, you mentioned gifts that he gave you, right? And a beautiful portion of the book really focuses on just the grind that you guys had, from when you graduated to going long distance and traveling, to him jumping between job to job just because of leadership and his struggle to find himself as a veterinarian and also just make a decent living. At what point were you guys able to reflect together and be like, oh, you know what? We're going to be okay. We're okay. Because, as again, most of our listeners know, veterinarians, you might think that we make a lot of money, but we're not truly an upper class profession, right?
Well, yeah, I've been doing a lot of interviews, and I did an interview with NPR. You're a very good interviewer, by the way. And I was thinking that he was so good, and you're keeping right up there. Good questions. And she asked me, when did you know you made it? And I said, we never had it. When did you know you were going to succeed? And I said, we never had a choice. We never had, everything we had was in the clinic when we decided to own it. Jim had worked for 3 actually other practices in 4.5 years.
Yeah.
And the first one didn't even last a year. The second one lasted 3 years. And then the last one, 1.5 years or something like that.
Happens to a lot of my colleagues. Again, this is why we feel so seen on this book. So this happens so much.
Yeah. And you try to pick the right fit, but it is obviously, the second practice that I referred to in the book, the bigger practice where Jim was the longest, actually, that was a grind and in surgery, and just like they didn't take appointments, and people would be like lined up outside the door. They were watching him do surgery but even then, I think every place he worked, he learned either something to do, he learned to be really good at spays and neuters there.
Yeah.
And then, or something not to do, a way not to treat a client or a way not to treat a associate or something like that. I'm trying to think, because that would be an interesting question. We've all, in Jim's estimation, for many years, we were always one step from poverty and the breadline, but I never felt that way. I guess the day I knew it, that I'm like, oh, maybe we don't have to worry so much anymore, was in 2016, which we'd been practicing a long time.
Wow.
We had our 25th wedding anniversary. And I remember planning the party, and we both graduated and Molly too, from Michigan State University. And we had it at their outdoor gardens. And I was picking a caterer, and I remember Jim saying, well, that's a lot of money. And then we found another one who did it for less, and it was really nice. And so at that point, I remember thinking, gosh, all these years in, we're still, even though it was a big party and stuff. So, but our wedding had been our wedding was catered by a restaurant in Owasso, Michigan called Mr. Hot Dog. So we finally come up a little bit in the world from that. But I remember thinking, gosh, as I drove to interview the caterer, I'm like, here we are this many years in, 25 years in, I'm 48 years old or whatever, and we still have to be cautious. Well, Jim gave me a beautiful second engagement ring that year, and I think that he had overextended, maybe, or not overextended, but that was part of my gift as well. And I remember when I saw the ring, I'm thinking, okay.
That's it.
Now we've made it, maybe. But I think we're always cautious. And I think that has stood us in good stead. We were so poor. We ate a concoction that Jim dreamed up called chicken hot dog chili. He'd make a big pot, and it was beans and tomatoes and chicken hot dogs for the protein. And he's like, it's chili again. And I'm like, yay. Or on Wednesday night, Burger King used to have I think it was 69-cent Whoppers, and we'd get that in one Diet Coke. And so we were so poor. So I think that probably what that did, we were too cautious for a lot of years, but it did teach us always to be grateful and to be, if not frugal, to be thoughtful.
Yeah. Well, from the way that you wrote the book, it seemed like from a financial standpoint, there were struggles, but it does seem like your family has always felt very rich from the very beginning, just with you and Jim, and then of course Molly. So
yeah, we felt richer when Molly came. We put off having a child we were married in 1981, and Molly was born in 1993. We were married 11 years. And I think that helped too. I think it would have been maybe a different kind of story had we decided to have a child a lot younger than we did, because we were both so busy. We were both building careers. And I write about that in The Girl with Three Birthdays, actually, how we had a nice enough house and we just put on an addition, and I had a fireplace, and Jim was working, and the snow was falling, and I had a glass of wine, and I was looking outside on, I don't know, Thursday night, and I looked at our new white kitchen. I'm like, someone's missing. It wasn't something's missing, it was someone's missing. And so it took us, I think that having waited that long was in our situation with our crazy schedules, Jim's in particular, I think that was probably one of the smartest things we did, was to decide we weren't ready for quite a while.
Yeah. And that would make sense when Jim says that he would just do it all over again the same way.
Oh, it's poignant. You don't get into your 60s without thinking, that most of it's gone. And so you don't get here without reminiscing fondly. And it's, I think, human nature to forget the cat that I had to go steal newspaper for because he wouldn't urinate on anything. You forget. Or all the animals that sat in our upstairs bedroom with an IV bag on them, or you don't think about those all the time.
No.
But
tell me about parenting and grandparenting.
It's cool.
Yeah. And
Molly
so,
was a charming little girl. The neighbor down the street where we lived, we raised Molly on a beautiful street in Spring Lake called Littlefield Lane, and it was named after the literal mansion at the end of the lane on the water, which was called Littlefields. And it was so pretty and picturesque. And the lady who lived there so many years, whose name was also Patty, said to me when Molly was little, she said, she looks like she stepped out of a book. She looks like she has curly red hair and porcelain skin and a lisp and a stubborn little personality, which has stood her in good stead because now she's a really strong woman. But um, so she was super easy to raise. I can remember
hmm,
2.5 problems in high school, which I won't talk about. But other than that, she was a delight. She was always a grateful kid and funny as anything. And she loved animals. It was her joy to be able to go into the clinic and help Jim. I don't know if they still use this term, like rub kittens if there was a C-section
mhm.
or something where you had. And so Molly was a treasure, and she married she married a guy she dated in high school, and he's a delight, and he's funny, and there couldn't be more dissimilar. They are different on every level, politics,
Yeah.
and also Eric is almost purely a carnivore and ice cream. And Molly's a vegetarian and has celiac disease, so she can't eat bread or anything like that. Personality and just everything. And I think they fell in love in seventh grade, dated in high school, and then began dating seriously in college and so forth. So they're a cute family. And James, our grandson, he was born on New Year's Eve,
Mm.
2021. He's four. He said he's medium size. He's 4.25 now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
So before we get into James, which I guess is pretty similar to Jim's name, but in terms of your philosophy, so with you and Jim, when it came to raising Molly, was there discussions on like kind of where your goals were with what kind of person you wanted to raise? Was this a very natural thing for you guys? I'm
yeah,
curious.
I think it was natural. I don't think that there was any. I don't. We didn't. We had real similar parenting style, which was really lax. We took turns until she was 5 years old, crawling out of her bedroom so she wouldn't wake up. And when Eric hears these stories, he's like, "What?" His parents had 3 boys, and they went to bed. They went to bed, which is a really wise thing to do. But we're like, "No, we can't upset her."
Good to
And
know. Okay. Yeah.
and so no, I don't remember any. I don't even remember any disagreements. I think Jim would have liked her not to date till she was now. But then my parents wouldn't let me date till I was 16, and Jim was almost my first date. So I was okay with 16. But yeah, I can't think of any real issues.
The main thing was just to kind of make sure that she felt safe, that she was in
Yes,
an environment to grow
absolutely.
herself.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even, that's an interesting question because I think I would remember if there was something, but I don't.
Yeah. And I only asked this just because this is currently like last night, my
Sure.
wife and I had a 4 hour discussion about raising our kids, whether or not we want a third kid, which is
Oh,
currently separated in decision, but my wife
yeah.
wanting a third already. And yeah, we constantly kind of talk about our daughter and just like how she's growing. I mean, she's 2.5, so she's just completely different person every single day. And there's the anxiety from our generation of all this information we get, right? On what if you do this one thing, it's gonna make them into this type of person. So we're trying to really navigate that together to make sure we're aligned with how we feel about things. That's
I
why I
think it's
ask.
really smart to have those discussions and that you are putting that kind of time into it. It's obvious that you're going to be probably are just great parents. I think that Jim and I have talked about the fact that we were raised in coming of age, coming teenagers in the 70s and raised in the late 60s and 70s or whatever. I think my parents were pretty strict, my mother in particular, and I think I had a bit of whiplash. Because my parents were 10 years older than Jim's parents because they had trouble adopting and so forth. My mother was of German descent and my father was Irish Catholic, and there was a lot of children should be seen and not heard. And I remember, and I didn't get spanked more than a couple times, but I remember how that felt.
Hmm.
And I remember thinking as a kid, I wish I was grown up because I don't like this. My parents were loving and kind, but I didn't feel like a person yet. And so I think that we had whiplash. That's why we crawled out of Molly's room, right? Because nothing could make Molly unhappy. On the other hand, someone said something to me once about, and I don't think they were being serious, but they're saying, oh, one of those, and they weren't talking about Molly, but in front of me, they said, one of those spoiled only children. And I don't take that term very well because I said, do you know what spoiled means? It means rotten. And I said, my daughter is an only child and she's not rotten at all. She's one of the most kind and sweet, compassionate, loving, fair people I know. And so whatever we did, we must have did it in the right amount or we just got lucky.
Okay, cool.
But yeah,
Cool.
I think, like I say, and so now Molly with James and Eric, they have a little bit of a different parenting style and different belief system. It's been interesting to watch them because of the way they were raised. Like I said, his parents had
Yeah.
3 boys and they have to have, right? They have to have boundaries.
Structure.
Yeah, 3 boys. And we just had one little charming girl. And so the way you're raised is kind of how you're going to think about it. So they have a little bit different opinions on things sometimes, but it's been interesting and educational to watch how they maneuver. And so far, I think they're doing fabulous. They listen to each other and take it into account and seem to be respecting each other's beliefs.
Yeah. One of my favorite things when it comes to grandparenting, which I'm far from at this point, but there's a quote where it's if you raise your children, you spoil your grandchildren. If you spoil your children, then you raise your
Oh,
grandchildren.
that's interesting.
What do
Yeah.
you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can see it. I hope I don't see any of that in us, but I can see what they're saying. James is a delight. He is funny. He's got about half and half of his mother's and father's characteristics and
Hmm.
personalities. You and probably hopefully your listeners, viewers will appreciate this story. We had 24 hours this weekend, and I'm like, come on, every kind of pet, every kind of animal thing. We were going to the neighbor's 90th birthday party, and Molly's at the door frantically knocking, and she kind of jumps in the house. Sorry, Molly, if you're watching this, all prettied up, all for the party. And she's like, snake in the driveway, toad in his mouth. And I'm like, what? So Jim goes out, and Eric and James are out there looking at it. And there was a snake tried literally to bite off more than he could chew. It was a big toad. It was a little snake, and they were at an impasse. There was nothing happening. So Jim pries the snake, and I said, "Is the toad okay?" And he said, "Yeah, he's got a couple small punctures, but but neither of them would have survived. They could go neither way."
Yeah.
So that was the first thing. James came into the kitchen. Molly told me last night or the night before, looking sad, and she said, "What's the matter, buddy?" And he said, "I'm just worried because that snake didn't get his dinner that night."
Oh.
And I said, "What about the toad?" So he has the
Yeah.
compassion at least to think about that side of it. Poor snake. We went up to help a friend whose cat she raises cats and she has a feral family, and one of them had gotten something in his paw, couldn't get it out, and they couldn't get near him. So we went and got, is it called the easy trap or something at the
Mm.
sides? And
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
so that was fun. We got that done though, and Kitty's all better, and Jim was able to trim his nails while he was taking a nice ketamine nap. And what was the other one? I was walking through the living room and I have a chapter in the book, I find lost pets. And these aren't necessarily long lost stories, but it's just pet things happen to us just like all the time.
Yeah.
And I was walking through the living room yesterday and I looked out and there's 2 squirrels chasing each other around. And I'm like, hey, and the one right into the pool. And I'm like, no. So I've got a net for turtles and stuff. So I'm
Uh-huh.
crouching down the basement to get, and like, you know what it's going to be? It's going to be that scene from Christmas Vacation where the squirrel's on Chevy Chase's face. But he hopped out. Somehow he got out of something. But
Yeah.
it just feels like in this that 24-hour period, it was one animal thing after another animal thing after another animal thing. But it just seems to happen to us.
Yeah. Now, Patti, I have 2 more questions for you
Yeah.
before I let you go today. The first one is veterinary related, and obviously I have to acknowledge you've never really officially been like in the veterinary field very much, kind of
Absolutely
from
not. Yeah.
outside, right? So I'll take what you say with a grain of salt, but just kind of seeing from just Jim's perspective too, and you have a beautiful chapter really about hiring help or hiring staff, and that is 100% accurate even till today. My question really just goes into what you've seen with new generations of vets, right? You've seen Jim's generation, right, and even before that, a bunch of grumpy old men at this point.
Yeah.
And now we're transitioning into different types of people, different types of generations and psychologies. From a hiring standpoint, because I know Dr. Moore does have some associates, have you seen any changes or what have you noticed different between older generation vets and now the ones that are coming out of vet school?
Yeah, and I mean, this is obviously just my take and the people
Mhm.
we've interviewed and so forth. We hired our first associate, gosh, probably 5 or so years in to the clinic. She was wonderful. We loved her. We would have kept her forever. We interviewed so many veterinarians that time, and I would go way overboard. I would like, we put them up. We didn't really have the money, but a nice bed and breakfast, and then we'd take them out to dinner and we'd have them to our
Oh,
house. And one time they invited their friends along, and I'm like, okay. And then I remember Jim made them the offer, and they kind of laughed at it, and I'm like, okay. I think
yep,
that
that sounds about right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
I think that when Jim graduated, it's in the book. His first job, he made $20,000. It was 1983. We thought we were rich. We then I guess I should have said I thought we'd made it at $20,000, and I was
Mhm.
making 12. Woohoo! And so I think that Jim was young, a young graduate for 1983 at that time at Michigan State. Anyway, it's only that one snapshot in time. A lot of people, I don't remember if there was a limit on how many times you could apply.
Mhm.
I don't know, but there were people in their 30s, well into their 30s, who were just graduating.
Mhm.
Some of them were even into the later 30s before they did. So I saw it as a time, and I don't know if it was because I was the same as a journalist. We expect, this is going to sound horrible, we expected to be treated badly, kind of. I knew I did as a journalist. I knew I had to work long hours for little money and so forth. So when we began years later to begin hiring, I thought, wow, they're asking for a lot more than we would have ever thought to ask for. And I didn't necessarily, except that we couldn't afford it, think it was bad. I thought they're asking for what they believe they deserve. And I saw, and then it went, some people we hired, it was like pretty demanding. I think now the veterinarians that we've been interviewing, and we have two relatively new associates actually, and one is 32 and one is 50. And they are reasonable. They ask for what they deserve, and but they also, and we might just have lucked out and gotten really great
Mhm.
candidates, but they work hard. They come in and check on their pets if we have anybody hospitalized and everything. So I don't know if there is a right and wrong answer, except that I know when we graduated, we were afraid to ask for much. And at least now, maybe people are, this is a demanding profession, even if you're not on emergency call.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think there are schools, and actually helped out with my universities. They now have like events or projects where it's about you help negotiate your contract.
Oh, wow.
So there's
Yeah.
classes for that now. And I graduated a little bit back. I graduated in 2018, and my
Okay.
sister is also a vet, and she graduated a few years before me. And just that 3 year difference between us, in those 3 years, the veterinary income almost doubled just in that
Wow.
time. So when she was still getting salary from 2014 and 15, but when I graduated, I was offered as a starting graduate double what she was making. And
Wow.
now you have COVID. And so it's an interesting time in veterinary medicine just because there's a lot more people spending a lot more money on pets, obviously student loans and all that. And there is a shift in expectations, right? And so you on one end you have like the ridiculous request of like, well, I want 4 months of PTO and $250,000, and it's like you're never going to get a job. And they also just want to do vaccines, right? And don't want to do
Right.
surgeries. And then of course so I think hopefully we're going to hit a point too where much like what you were able to experience are having veterinarians who have an understanding and a realistic approach to their salaries and a lot of accountability.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear that. We see it. And Jim, even despite his age, really keeps up with, he does all kinds of CE and because we have had, especially these last two have been, especially our veterinarian who's 32, younger.
Mhm.
And she's been bringing some of her friends over like before graduation, and they've been practicing surgery and kind of things on some pets that we're seeing it. And I have great hope for the profession. I always did.
Mhm.
but it's nice to see it again through really fresh eyes. She's only been out of school a year. So, and Jim taught at Michigan State for, oh gosh, 14 years. So he'd come home with stories on both sides.
Yeah.
But overall, what I liked to hear was, boy, is this one going to go places. Boy, is this one talented. And it wasn't just their surgical skills, or it was more their philosophy and their manner that would impress him that way.
Yeah. And you don't teach those things. So those are just kind of natural.
Exactly. It's kind of innate.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree with you. I think the future of vet med it's exciting to kind of be in this period right now.
Yes, yeah. I think so too.
So last question I have for you. What's the future for you and Jim and Molly?
Well, Molly has started getting her nurse certification, and then things at the clinic got really busy, and she's really busy and had James and so forth. So I don't actually know how she's doing with that, but I can't imagine a time when she wouldn't work for a veterinary practice. Jim and I are coming to the age where he's trying to figure that out at the end. And like I say, he'd like to do it all over again if he could. And we're trying. He had, for maybe 2 or 3 years now, he's taken one more day a week off. So we have a long weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
Yes.
And
no more on calls either, right?
No, not for many years now.
Yeah, great.
But, I probably in the last 3 months, we've had 4 friends or family or something that we dash in for. Something happens, but that's a whole different reason and so forth. And for me, I Don't Look in the Freezer just launched, and I am really busy doing all kinds I like to do writing workshops. And I teach a workshop called Write Your Story. And it isn't necessarily just for people who want to write a book. A lot of times people say, I'd like to leave memories for my family, but I don't know how to organize them, or how do I make it interesting, or that kind of thing. So I've done, I think, 3 now, and I really enjoy it. And there's some real talent out there. And I've got 2 or 3 of those more scheduled. And I'm doing a lot of book signings. Our favorite place in the world is Mackinac Island, Michigan. We have property there. We haven't built on it yet, but we bought it last year to hopefully maybe at some point have a place where we can go. We stay in hotels now, and it's wonderful. It's an island with no cars. It's only horses.
Wow.
And it's so cool. It's right on the street of Mackinac, and the Mackinac Bridge. If you've ever seen a picture, it looks right out on the Mackinac Bridge. And so I'm going up there. They have one thing the island is known for, besides its big Clydesdale horses that take people around, the taxis, and the fudge shops, is lilacs. And in June, they have the Lilac Festival, and I'm going up to sign books. This book opens on Mackinac Island, actually, at the Grand Hotel there. And I'm going up, and I'll be at their bookstore, their little bookstore there, which is charming, and signing books and so forth for them. So I'm going a lot around Michigan because so many places in Michigan are mentioned in the book. I'm going to Owasso, Michigan next week, which is Jim's hometown.
Okay. And I think that's there's a list of where you'll be on your website.
Yes, we're trying to keep it updated. It keeps changing every day. So check back every week or two, because we change it as we can, because things just keep coming in. So yes, PattiEddington.com has got, and when our interview is posted, I will put that there. And
absolutely. Yeah,
and all the places I'll be speaking and other things that I've done media-wise. And this is a nice 3rd or 4th or 10th chapter for me. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, and many more to come. Now, your workshops, would you have links on your website as well for those too?
Yeah, I usually put the events up. I personally don't charge for my workshops. Okay. Sometimes a bookstore or something will, but I don't charge the bookstore, and they usually try to give me an honorarium, but I usually turn it right back to them, because libraries in particular, because they're all struggling. We need to keep our indie bookshops going. If anyone is interested who's watching this, if you can get the book from your local independent bookstore, that would be wonderful. You can easily get it online. You can get it anywhere books are sold. It's distributed by Simon & Schuster nationally. But if you can support that cute little bookstore in your town, that would be great.
Okay. Thank you for saying that for me.
Yeah.
All right, Patti, thank you so much for just being so wonderful and having this conversation with me. I'm going to show this book here again. Don't Look in the Freezer. All right, The Very Strange Life of a Veterinarian's Wife by Patti Eddington. I'll go ahead, and anyone who has any questions, please leave some comments on the podcast. I'd be more than happy to forward over to Patti as well. Again, thank you so much for your time here today.
You are very welcome. Thank you very much.